say good morning to all of you. I'm Tracy Eide, co-chair of Senate Transportation Committee, and joined by co-chair Curtis King. And we have the Budget Cabinet here this morning, which is Senator Steve Hobbs and Senator Joe Fain. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank them. We've done many hours late into the evening of budget meetings. And as always, Senator King is a true gentleman and has put up with me through the thick and thin and the arguments, but overall it's been actually very wonderful. And having Senator Fain and Senator Hobbs in the room has really made a very good, strong budget, I believe. This budget was jointly developed by all of us standing up here. We know that transportation is the backbone to a vital economy, and we need to maintain a strong infrastructure, and it's the driving force of our economy recovery. I want to be absolutely clear to all of you that this is a bare bones budget. There is nothing new. It's bare bones. This budget keeps our major projects on track and on schedule, and priority has been given to maintenance and operations, and delivering our promises from 2003 with the nickel package and 2005, the Transportation Partnership Act. Each of us will highlight key aspects of the budget, and my job is to highlight on the ferry system. We have restored and maintained current ferry service levels. That means we have not cut a single run. We are funding additional crew members to meet the Coast Guard requirements, and that's a hefty chunk of $11.8 million. We continue full funding and construction of the second 144 Olympic Classic vessel, which is supported by the 2012 fee revenues. We are working to convert the Hayak, which we call the Prius model of our ferry system. It's $22 million, but it provides us with a more efficient engine and will save us probably about, we figured, 20% in fuel costs. We begin design on the terminal replacement project in Seattle, so that's our Coleman dock, and we'll be moving forward with the Mukilteo terminal also. This is my 17th year here in the legislature, and I have served on transportation every one of those years. And we all know that the transportation budget has always been bipartisan. And as you can see, it's continuing to be bipartisan. They're all our roads. Every one of us, north, south, east, west, every one of us drive these roads. We all depend on each other. This budget keeps our transportation system safe and reliable. It's the driving force for our families and freight mobility for businesses to ship their products. There's nothing worse than being stuck in traffic, and I've been there many a time. We need to keep the state moving forward. The Senate will continue to work with the House and the governor to pass a strong budget, and transportation plays a critical role in our state's economy. And now I'm going to turn it over, and I believe it's to Senator Fain. Is that correct? Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Eide. Thank you all for coming to what I'm sure is the most exciting budget rollout that you'll attend this morning. I do want to, again, compliment the process here. Process matters in government, and to have a bipartisan process and to have our two esteemed co-chairs bring us together and work in such a collaborative manner, it brings out a much better product in the end. And I particularly want to compliment Senator Eide for her great work in putting this budget together and leading our committee, and Senator King is okay too. So I'll be highlighting a couple of specifics from both road improvements, highway programs, as well as the State Patrol. To begin with, as Senator Eide spoke about, we'll be continuing our nickel TPA and federal fund packages to move forward $4.1 billion in statewide highway improvement construction. We'll be booking $200 million in toll revenue for the Alaska Way Viaduct. That number has fluctuated over time from earlier estimates of what those toll revenues could be as high as $400 million. There were some that were lower. This is designed to ensure that we lock in our state level of contribution, and again, an expectation of $200 million in toll revenues there. Because of some dollars that were unable to be spent in some local programs that use federal dollars, we had an opportunity to find new places to place some of those federal dollars. This budget chooses to invest in Interstate 5 through King County, specifically between Tukwila and Northgate, in the amount of $60.5 million for concrete preservation and the replacement of some of those concrete panels. It's a prudent investment for one of our most widely used, heavily trafficked areas of roadway in the state of Washington. And then we've also chosen to break out how we're handling some of the budget process as it relates to roadway maintenance and engineering equipment. So we're splitting out FTEs from maintenance. So we ensure that the Transportation Department is investing not only in the people that we need, but in the actual replacement of the roadway maintenance and ice removal machinery that has become very aged and outdated in our fleet. Next, on State Patrol, it's a not often talked about aspect of the transportation budget, but it's clearly one of the most important. It's public safety is the paramount duty of the transportation budget, and the State Patrol is the one that takes that forward for us. So there's $5.3 million in this budget to continue the ongoing costs of the 21 troopers that we added in 2012. $16.4 million to continue the mobile office platform rollout that has been started in recent years due to our need to narrowband based on federal mandate. These are critical investments to allow greater interoperability and communications between troopers throughout the entire state. Very important investment. And then there are some key arbitration awards that we have decided to fully fund. Again, these don't take place unless there is an affirmative decision by the budget panel to fund them. $5.6 million for an arbitration award for the Troopers Association and $162,000 for the Lieutenants Association. We're in a bit of an employment crisis in our State Patrol because relative wages between the state agency and competing city, municipal, county law enforcement organizations. We need to be able to retain these top professionals, this talent that we have in our state trooper pool, and so this will take us in a good step towards that. And also, we've restored a previous cut to the aerial enforcement program. $1.15 million in new money will bring us back to the 2007-2009 levels. The aerial enforcement allows us to invest in those programs that can locate missing persons, can assist local law enforcement, catch speeders. So it's a prudent investment. And again, as Senator Eide said, this is a bare bones budget, but I think it's one that prioritizes those key elements that are so important: our highway preservation, keeping the promise on nickel and TPA, and also investing in our public safety professionals and our troopers. Thank you. I don't know who's next.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Again, you're going to hear from all of us saying what a great process this was. It was a bipartisan effort. It's a tradition that we have in the Senate for the last couple of years, and I hope that applies to the operational budget, which I think will happen. But here for transportation, it's always been bipartisan. And for Senator King and Senator Eide, it's been a pleasure working with you too, and Senator Fain. It's great to be in that room, and everybody in there compromised a bit and put in their 2 cents to work for the entire state of Washington to create a first-class transportation system. Now, I'm going to brief what I call the other category of transportation. We have aviation, public transportation, and rail. There's 137 airports, small airports across the state of Washington, and some communities rely on these airports for tourism, fighting wildfires, search and rescue mission, and even tissue, organ, and blood transport. In this particular budget that we have put $1.5 million in aid grants, which brings the total for per biennium to $3.5 million. For public transportation, we'll continue to fully fund the 2003 and 2005 commitments to special needs transportation, $25 million, rural mobility, $17 million, and regional mobility, $40 million in grant programs. We will also maintain the 2012 commitment to provide $26 million in transit operating grants in the 2013-2015 biennium. This is much needed money. I think many of you know that there are several transit agencies that are struggling because of the recession. I think we've heard recently of cuts in some transit agencies. I hope this money will help keep some of those services. In terms of rail, we are going to increase funding for rail grant programs from by $1.25 million for a total of $4 million per biennium. This money is an investment on track improvements and safety, and for the state of Washington, which is a trade-dependent state, this money is greatly needed to help our overall economy and export market. So with that, I believe Senator King has not spoken, so we'll let Senator King speak.
Well, good morning. I'm Curtis King, co-chair of the Senate Transportation Committee. I want to talk to you briefly about some of the other aspects of this budget, which are reforms. First off, we are going to fund a study about the integration of ferry fare payment systems and customer service, looking at how do we make that work with our good-to-go tolling contract. And our thought here is that we try to develop a universal system rather than having 5 or 6 different payment schedules that we currently have. And we believe that this will provide a less costly and more effective system for the payment of everybody that uses this system. We have granted project selection authority and responsibility to FMCIB, which basically allows them to take funds that have been left over from projects that didn't need it and immediately transfer them to other projects at their discretion on those projects that meet the criteria that they have and that they use on a regular basis. We believe this is going to allow us to accomplish some of these projects more quickly and more effectively. We have provided $150,000 to the JTC to study the costs and benefits of outsourcing the audit functions to provide an independent oversight of the WashDOT tolling division. And it is our belief that an independent oversight would be more beneficial than the audits that are currently occurring within the system itself. We reduce administrative costs by $2.9 million within the tolling division, and we did this based upon a careful review of the administration and overhead. These ongoing savings, are the result of FTE reductions, reduced reliance on consultants, and leveraging existing administrative resources that are already funded elsewhere in the agency. We direct federal funds to predetermined preservation projects. And preservation is an area that we have neglected, and we want to see that any additional funds coming into the state from the feds would be used on a selected list of these preservation projects. Another reform is that the Budget Cabinet has sent a request to the state auditor requesting a performance audit of the 3 major projects, the 520 Bridge, the Board Tunnel, and the CRC. Another reform is that we have provided $243,000 to JLARC to review the methods and systems used by WashDOT for estimating the maintenance and preservation needs and costs. And our thought here is that we want to be assured that the way these costs and needs have been determined are accurate, and we think this is the way to do that. We are also working with Senator Erickson, the prime sponsor of a bill that is in Ways and Means, that would allow the state portion of the sales tax collected on highway projects to come back to transportation rather than going into the general fund. So just to kind of quickly review where we think this budget takes us. This budget maintains our funding for our current projects. It adds $60 million plus for the concrete preservation on I-5. It maintains the current service on the ferry system. It fully funds the second 144-car Olympic-class ferry. It provides for the needed resources to our state patrol. It puts millions into maintenance and preservation. It keeps the funding promises that we have made in the 203 and 205 revenue packages, as well as the distribution of the 2012 fee revenue package that we passed last year. We have also incorporated many reforms that we believe will make our transportation system more effective and efficient. As we have said, this is a bare bones budget, but we feel that it keeps the state moving forward as best we can under the budget restraints that we are presented with. I want to recognize the other co-chair of transportation, Senator Tracy Eide, and thank her for her willingness to work through with all of us and taking the time to discuss all of these issues and reach what I believe are good conclusions. And she and I have had numerous conversations about all of these issues, and it has truly been an honor and a privilege to co-chair the Transportation Committee and the Budget Committee with her. I also want to thank Senator Hobbs and Senator Fain for all of their thoughts and input and their willingness to work through all of these issues as we go through this process and resolve or try to resolve as best we can many of the transportation challenges that we have ahead of us. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't say to all of our staff, partisan and nonpartisan, we could not have done this without you. You think that we spend a lot of time in these meetings. Well, I want to tell you, I can't tell you how many hours and hours and Saturdays and Sundays that this staff has worked to put this budget together and to help us put this budget together. So I want to say thank you for all of that effort. Thank you for your patience in answering the hundreds of questions that I think sometimes from one week to the next we kept asking. But we appreciated your patience with us and appreciated very much the methods and the style with which you help us craft this budget. We believe and we know that you are all the best. With that, we will try and answer any questions that anyone may have. Thank you for being here.
I guess to start off with, on the dollar question, Senator Erickson's bill to reroute the portion sales tax from transportation projects from the general fund to transportation use. How much money would that be?
We have not gotten that far. The thought is that that bill wouldn't be fully implemented until the 2017-19 biennium, so that we do not have an effect upon any of the current budgets that will be presented, I think, later today. No, it will not have an impact on the current budgets that will be rolled out hopefully today. So.
Senator King, in your statement here, you mentioned something about how this year there was a particularly challenging set of circumstances. I was hoping I could get the both of you to talk a little bit about the sort of challenges that you faced here and what you had to do in order to overcome them.
Well, one of my challenges, of course, was being a co-chair of a committee that you've never been before. Although I have to say, I had an extreme learning curve, and that's where the staff came in, the hours and hours of educating me personally. It's different being a vice chair of a committee, and I've been vice chair of transportation for a number of years. And Senator King and I both served on the budget cabinet for, what was it, 5 years, I believe. Yeah. But boy, you don't realize until how much work Mary Margaret did before we got into the room and getting into the nuts and bolts of what the budget entails. But I have to say, I could not have done this without Senator King. Always a gentleman, truly an an honor to work with and serve with. I have to tell you, if it would have been anybody else, I don't know if we could have gotten there, but actually, we did quite well. Understanding that we didn't have any revenue, we just had to move forward and make sure that we put any money that we had towards maintenance and operation. I think we all, and preservation, we all were on the same page with that.
Well, and I think that's the challenge that we all had is we have limited funds. And again, as I've said earlier, Senator Idy has just been an absolute gracious lady to work with, and we can
Don't know about that.
we can sit here and sing Kumbaya all we want. But the point is that when we did get to an area that we may not have agreed, all of us, all four of us, sat down and we discussed the issue, and we did it in a very polite and effective manner. And as we worked through these issues, we found the common ground. And where we found the common ground, then we built upon that until we had a consensus that this is the way we were going to go. And we did, I think, in a very concise and effective manner. And we have reached agreement on every issue that has come before us. Some of us were not happy with some of those, and happy with other decisions that were made. But that's the art of compromise, and that's the art of putting together a budget that we feel is very bipartisan and still moves the state forward from a transportation standpoint.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask Senator King, under the reform list, the audits of the three major projects, is that in response to the problems 520 has had?
Mainly, yeah. I think it's time that we look at these major projects when you have one that the first problem that we faced, and it's the pontoons, basically wipes out the risk that the dollars you had in there for risk for the whole project is wiped out by one problem in the very first part of the well, and maybe it's not the first, but the first or second part of the whole project. It gives you concern as to what's going to happen from here on out. And I think by reviewing the other two projects as well will help us reach a determination that we are moving forward in the right direction and that we can do what we can to address any future problems that may be facing us as we go through the construction of these three projects.
On the reform part of this, obviously the Good to Go program has had various litany of problems as well, overcharging people, various things. So what makes you think that ferry customers would benefit from going on that system as well?
Well, my answer would be is that we have had problems, and we are going to be auditing that portion of it too, to see where we can have a positive impact on how that system works. We also believe that a lot of the initial problems have been identified and somewhat corrected. Doesn't mean it's a perfect system. Personally, I think it's still too costly. But supposedly as we develop more and more areas that it will be told those costs will come down. But I think we need a system that we can use no matter whether you live in Yakima and come over to ride the ferries or come over to Seattle and want to go across the 520 bridge. That there's a system there that allows you to do that without being as cumbersome as I believe the system we have now is.
Couple follow-up questions.
Are you confident that there's enough money allocated for 520 project and for the viaduct at this point?
At this point, I believe so, yes. You know, we just have to take it day by day, but right now we are on budget, and we've had a few bumps along the way, but we always put money into each project to have a little bit of a cushion. And regarding the Good to Go pass, this is a goal I think all of us up here really want to see happen statewide, is we want to have one pass for everything, from ferries to tolls to, I don't care if it's a bridge. We just need to make sure that we can have one consistent route to go with one card.
Where does this leave the discussion about a funding package, a gas tax increase, the kind of thing that Representative Coburn is talking about.
You want me to take that?
You can start.
And then you can, okay. As you'll see, this is where one of the differences comes in. I always say take one day at a time. Let's wait and see what comes over from the House of Representatives. But according to the budget that we're proposing today, there are no new projects. There's nothing in there other than to continue on what we already have. And for us to look into the future for anything, we need more revenue. And I believe that once the package gets over here, because it changes from day to day, then we will address it. But I'm looking at it thinking that we're going to need something after doing this budget. Senator King has a different point of view.
Well, I'm not sure that it's totally different in the sense that it's the timing of when you put forth this kind of a package. And obviously, there are varying thoughts on that issue. So, but I would say that, as Senator Ide has said, we need to see what comes over from the House, whether they can even get a revenue package out of the House, and then what is in that revenue package, how are the revenues raised, and then how are they distributed. I think those are the things that will help us determine maybe when and how that might go forward. But I think it's too early to really be definitive about it.
Okay, reading between the lines, it seems like you're staking out an initial position, waiting to see what the House does, and you have not ruled out an increase in gas taxes later on in the negotiating process. Shoot me down if I'm wrong.
Well, go ahead.
Well, you're absolutely right. We just don't count our chickens before they're hatched. You have to wait until they get over here from the House of Representatives. We cannot make a decision until the revenue package gets here. So it's just a matter of, then we will reevaluate and see where we stand. What's in the package is already changed substantially since the beginning, and so it can change again. It's just, Judy's done just a fantastic job of moving forward and trying to listen to everybody's point of view, but I can honestly tell you this is the first time in the 17 years that I've been down here that I can see labor and business and chamber of commerces and cities and counties and environmentalists and bikers and you name it, everybody on board requesting a revenue package. I've never seen it before. And so I'm hoping that we can move forward because it's vital to our economy. We need to be in the forefront, and I think Washington State is instrumental in trade. We're 40% dependent upon it, and that means we have to have a great infrastructure. And to keep that going is to make sure that we're continuing to pay for it.
So to some degree, I agree with my good chair. But yes, there are a litany of people lined up to support this bill. But there's one other element that we have to consider, and that's the people of the state of Washington are going to have to pay. At this time, it's my belief that I'm not sure they're willing to support a revenue package. And so then it begs the question of, are we going to pass a revenue package out of the legislature as a standalone, the legislature just passes it, or are we going to send it to a vote of the people through a referendum? And that discussion hasn't been out there, hasn't been fully vetted, and so I think we just have to wait and see. Again, it comes back to what's in the package, how are we raising the funds, and where do those funds go? So all of those elements have to be talked about and negotiated. Each of us has to go to our caucuses and say, here's what it is. So what's your pleasure? Do you want to look at it? Do you not want to look at it? Or is this the year to do it? Is this not the year to do it? Do we do it as a referendum, or we do it as the legislature just passes it? All of those elements need to be looked at. I think all of us up here can agree that if we want to address the problems that we have, the challenges that we have, I should say, 509-167, Finished Snoqualmie Pass, North-South Freeway, the challenges at SR9, a variety of those kinds of issues, it's going to take additional funds for us to do that. But again, from where I stand, you got to look at, is the public ready to support that and give us more of their money? And so I think that's the discussion we'll have as we move forward through the rest of this session.
One more question, please.
Help me understand this, the good to go pass, making it universal, essentially. Are you saying that somebody from Ritzville or Pullman coming over to use the ferries is going to have a good to go pass in order to get on the ferries and ride them that one time that they come over, or are you still going to be able to buy a ticket?
Yeah, well, we haven't got down into the weeds that far, but the idea is that if you are a customer if you ride 405 as an example, and you want to use the hot lanes that will be developed on 405 going north from Bellevue, and you want to ride the ferries on occasion for whatever business purposes or recreational purposes you have, that there's one card that you can get that will allow you to do that, rather than the multitude of things that you have to go through now.
But that will be the only way somebody can get on.
I don't believe that we'll ever
I don't
get to
think
that
so.
point, no.
Yeah.
What's the timetable for getting a good, to crunch everything into a master system? Is this like next year, 5 years down the road?
This is, again, what this study hopefully will come back to us with. What are the challenges of doing this? How do we proceed and go forward? So I don't have an answer for you that we could give you.
I can't remember can you remember the date?
When is the study due?
I think it's a year.
November of this year.
Yeah.
Forgive me, Senators, one other topic that I think is important to address. King County Metro has just this week said they're out of money. They need help from the state, significant help, $75 million, big cuts to service if they don't get it. This budget maintains levels, but what about helping King County Metro out?
You want me to give them the good news, or?
Well, this is where we differ too, but this is okay.
This budget does not address that.
Yes, it does not.
Now, that doesn't mean that as we move forward and as we deal with what's coming out of the House, that we might not address, address some of those issues. But this budget does not address that issue.
And if I may?
You may.
Thank you. So I believe that we need to find some local options, and I'm hoping that that is going to be in the revenue package. We will help. $75 million is a lot of money, and if you do a biennium, that's 150. That's a lot of money. So we want to give the locals all the options we possibly can give, but just make sure that we're using our money wisely. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.